What's up, Penn Staters, and thanks for tuning into the Football Letter podcast. This week, we welcome volunteer leader Bethany Pace. Bethany is a two-time Penn State graduate and serves as vice president of our Upper Chesapeake Chapter. She has a wonderful Penn State story, and we're going to learn more about her and the chapter today. I have been looking forward to this conversation since we started swapping emails. Bethany, welcome to the Football Letter podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much, John, for having me. I've been super excited as well.
Absolutely. Bethany was so excited that she has watched previous episodes to prep for today's conversation. She has come prepared. As she said, it's the Penn State way of doing things. And speaking of the Penn State way, Bethany, you have such a wonderful story of how you fell in love with Penn State at Spend a Summer Day. Thought maybe a good place to get started would be if you wanted to share that story with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, although I was born in Pittsburgh and my parents were both from Pittsburgh. So Pennsylvania always featured, largely in my upbringing. And we had terrible towels, being a Pennsylvanian was still part of somehow my Ohio identity. And so when it began time to look at colleges and universities, and I was a first generation college student, so neither of my parents had gone to college, but they made it very clear that it could be part of my story if that's what I wanted. And so Penn State was on my radar. I mean, again, I'm living in Ohio, right? So a lot of Ohio schools would typically be on the radar. The reason Penn State was on my radar is because there was a fellow classmate 2 years older than me by the name of BJ Reyes, who also went to my high school, and we both worked on the school newspaper. And he had gone to Penn State, and he was a journalism major. And because, again, we were both involved in the school newspaper, and he went there, I was like, well, maybe I should check that out, because I always thought BJ was a great writer, and his brother happened to be in my graduating class. But that was really the reason why I said to my parents, I'd like to go visit Penn State. And so we took a drive there one summer day. It was in July of 1990. And the sun was shining and the sky was blue and white, and it honestly just felt magical. So my dad and I went, and we stayed in a residence hall because they had that overnight option. And every moment of the day, I just loved it. And I said to him, this is where I want to be. Like, this is it.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like it was destiny for you, Bethany. Once you did get on campus, then how much of your student experience, was what you hoped that it would be?
Oh, John, I don't really even know I had an idea of what the student experience could be. Again, part of it was just because I hadn't grown up with parents who had gone to college, and I hadn't really observed what it would look like to have a college experience really up close and personal, to be honest. So a lot of it was very much unwritten. My hopes, at the very least, I knew I was going to be a journalism major, and I wanted to write for the Collegian, right? So that was like what I entered with. I didn't know that I would end up joining a sorority that I love to this day, and where my best friends came from. I didn't know that I would become an RA, which some of my best friends have come from too, and that work as an RA would lead to my career in higher education and my master's studies. So, I had a very baseline level of expectation for what my college experience could be. And then it turned out to be greater than I ever would have imagined.
Well, let's follow up, if you don't mind me asking. Being a first generation college student, we know that can very much be a deeply meaningful experience. So how much do you resonate with that kind of story of being a first generation college student and really, doing something, for your entire family in some cases?
Yeah, I mean, it's a core part of my identity. And what's interesting about it, John, is that for a long time I didn't talk about it because I was embarrassed about it. When I went to Penn State, and other people were not first generation college students, and I felt like, well, I don't want to talk about the fact that my parents haven't been to college because maybe they'll think less of me, or maybe I won't be seen, in as having the same potential as everybody else. So it's part of my core identity now, but as a younger person, it was very much, I felt like a stigma in a way, but it's huge for my family because, and I'll just talk about this in terms of my mother's side of the family, but my grandmother had a 5th grade education, and she cleaned houses for a living, to make ends meet. And so, of course, my mom did graduate from high school, and she did do some trade school work before heading off to a career with United Airlines. But it's transformed my life in a way that now, I was tempted to get my daughter, who's a student at the University of Maryland in College Park, a second generation t-shirt, some level. She's also an RA, so I was really excited about that too. But it just means so much when I dropped her off that, like, yeah, she's the person I had wanted to be when I was, when I started at Penn State. But yeah, definitely part of the story. And I'm grateful that Penn State, has featured so heavily and a part of my identity in that way too.
No, absolutely. And thank you for sharing, Bethany. So you also got your master's degree from Penn State, as I said, 2-time Penn State grad. Obviously, education was a focus. It sounds like certainly as an emphasis growing up, and then getting your master's degree in that field. What is it about education, higher education, that draws you to that field?
Yeah, well, it's exactly to the question that you just asked. It's the transformative power of education, right? It's knowing things that you didn't know before and applying those things to the life that you hope to have for yourself. That really, I think, was the hook. And once I was there, it just sort of grew in many different ways. And the decision to get a master's degree was really like sort of kismet in a way, because yes, I was a journalism major. Yes, I wrote for the Collegian, but I also realized that, like, covering news at all hours of the day was going to interrupt my sleep. And that I like to sleep even then. So I was like, okay, I don't know that being a journalist is going to be the right fit for me career-wise. I think it's going to be important that I take these skills. I've always been a writer and wanted to speak, and the critical thinking, but it was my experience being an RA that exposed me to the idea that there's a whole profession of people that work at colleges and universities to help transform their experience, or to facilitate that transformation that happens on a campus. And once I realized that, and Penn State had one of the best programs at the time in higher ed administration and college student personnel, I said, okay, this is confirmation that this is what I should be doing.
So as a great transition from your time as a student to your time as a Penn State graduate, you have this another wonderful story where after you took your last final exam, you walked downtown through the snow, as you say, and you bought a Penn State alumni sweatshirt. Do you still have that sweatshirt, Bethany?
I sure do, John, and I have it right here. And I could not wait to go to Family Clothesline. I mean, you see how the neck is like so stretched out and the sleeves are tattered. But I'll tell you, this is my favorite sweatshirt to wear, and I wear it to watch parties now. But it just meant so much to sort of like step into that next chapter. It was like I didn't really realize how much I was anticipating being a Penn State alum until that moment where it was like, I need to go back to my room, right? Light snow is falling. But I was like, nope, this is the moment I've been waiting for, even though graduation was going to be in early January. But I was like, I'm getting this today. So yeah, core memory.
So why was it, and this is kind of a, an obvious follow-up, but why has it been important for you to hold on to that sweatshirt?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think it really, I think it signifies kind of a rite of passage. It's almost like it's a rite of passage in a way that it's something that my parents, my grandparents had never, achieved. And it was like a tangible recognition that I've done it. That like I've changed my family's history in this way, and I'm tied to Penn State forever. Like I can wear it, I mean, I've always been proud to be a Penn Stater when I was an undergrad before I graduated, but being able to sort of put it on as I've completed something here truly did feel like walking through a gateway into a life that my parents had prayed for, that my grandparents had prayed for, and others.
You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Bethany Pace. Bethany is just sharing great story after great story. We're going to transition a little bit and change gears. Bethany, you serve as the vice president of our Upper Chesapeake Chapter, one of our amazing volunteer leaders. What inspired you to give back to the Alumni Association in Penn State and become involved with one of our chapters?
Yeah, well, there's just such a strong sense of community as a Penn Stater. And I think most people would agree with that. I mean, of course, I don't live in Pennsylvania now, but in Maryland, when I have on a shirt or I see others with a shirt or a hat or something, I'm compelled to I'm just drawn to them, naturally. And I will stop, and my kids know this, will accost anyone, anywhere, Safeway, Target. If I see a Penn State, anything, I'm like, oh, hi, did you go to Penn State? And that's just who I am, like, without being involved, in the chapter. Because I do respect and love the community so much that I was a part of, and that I feel like continues no matter what year you graduated or what your experiences were like or what campus you attended, that there's just this sense of community that is warm and I'm always drawn to. So it was actually another person suggested that I go to a watch party this past fall. Because I hadn't done a lot with Penn State, at least the chapter, the alumni chapter, while I was raising kids, right, in the throes of parenting. But with one off at college and one in 8th grade, I have a little bit more flexibility. So I decided I would go to the watch party. And when I went, like, the chapter here, they're just enthusiastic. I just felt like these are my people. This is my place. And I just enjoyed the fellowship, so to speak, and the cheering and the enthusiasm. And it's like everything that I know Penn Staters to be: caring, smart, motivated, talented, interesting. And I think I spent probably 30 minutes that night talking to a grad of the class of 73. And he and I just had the most lovely time together, connecting, and it felt like my sweatshirt, John. It felt like I was actually putting on my sweatshirt when I went there. So then I was like, I'm in. And of course, probably before I left, I said, I'm happy to volunteer. Like, if you need people, let me know. I was transitioning from a career in higher ed to working for myself. So that created some flexibility in my schedule. And Patty, the wonderful Patty, our chapter president, was like, yeah, we can use you. And I was like, great, I'll do it. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do.
Well, I think you read my mind, Bethany, because I was going to ask you, so you learn about the chapter, you go to a watch party. How do you go from that point to becoming the vice president? And it sounds like it was just a natural, like, path for you. Like, you showed up and you just said,
Mm-hmm.
I want to get more involved. And so was it as simple as that, where you showed up and you just said, these are my people and I need to get more involved?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, like, it was a very direct path. I mean, I didn't have to, like, campaign or anything like that. I mean, I came to more watch parties after that. And I know, so Patty and I think had lunch together in February, and there was an opening on the board, and she was like, would you want to be on the board? And I was like, of course. I was honored. And then from there, it's just been like learning opportunity after learning opportunity, like not just in terms of meeting new people, right, expanding my Penn State network, but also like getting to interact with people from the Alumni Association, like Lauren. And I'm going to the leadership conference at the end of this month, and I'm super excited. So it's like, I feel like my Penn State knowledge is growing, even after decades from being a student.
Yeah, it's the idea of lifelong learning. Penn State, being a Penn Stater, is a lifelong experience. Shout out to Lauren Wright, who Bethany referenced. Lauren Wright is one of our regional directors at the Alumni Association. superstar colleague. But we have a volunteer conference at the end of July on campus where volunteer leaders join together for 2 or 3 days of just learning and networking and just kind of fellowship, as you were saying, Bethany. The idea of staying connected to Penn State, there was an obvious connection for you. The opportunity to do that through an alumni chapter, how meaningful is it for you to have that opportunity to stay connected to Penn State specifically through an alumni chapter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of unifies experience or memories in a way. I feel like it's sort of I would make the analogy of kind of a quilt in a way. It's like knitting together various people's experiences in a really interesting, unique way because there are connection points and of course there are points of divergence. But all of that deepens one's love and connection for the institution because those even the diverging points, right? People are pleased to share something positive, right? And so that is a positive confirmation of what you already know, but in a different way. And again, it feels very much like a quilt of memories that you get to sort of carry with yourself, that broadens what you knew. So I think that for me, that's part of it. Also, I want my daughters to see how much I care about this community. Being this highly engaged is something I want them to learn from me. I want to be a good model. So whatever their alma mater is, although I have hopes that maybe the oldest will come to Penn State for grad school and the youngest might get an undergrad there one day. But I want to model for them what it looks like to have a lifelong commitment to something, and to know that you can add value to an experience. Volunteering, is also key. So I have a lot to be grateful for from Penn State, and this is a way for me to just, give it back.
So we are talking with Bethany Pace here on the Football Letter podcast. I'm going to ask her to talk a little bit more about the chapter. If you're watching on YouTube, we've got the chapter website running at the bottom, psuupperchesapeake.com. We'll throw the homepage up here on the screen. And so, Bethany, when you've got game day at a chapter watch party, what is the atmosphere like? What is the vibe like? How do you try to bring that Penn State spirit to the chapter and your watch parties?
Yeah, I mean, the vibe is lots of like great swag. Everyone is, carrying a purse, a Penn State items I've never even knew came in Penn State versions. I see on the watch party days. We have a cowbell. That's a key part of our of our fun that day. But we've really been fortunate to be able to partner with a restaurant called Falston Bear House, shout out to them, who allow us to come there every week. And they give us a designated space and they let us be as loud and as rambunctious as we want to be. And they're accommodating, they've given us specials, and so again, everyone just converges and shows up, and it's like coming back to the same like communal living room, every time we're there for a watch party. And so, but yeah, it's enthusiastic again, lots of cheering, lots of we are, lots of, again, cowbell, antics. It makes it fun.
When you've got, an engaged crowd there for a game day, how much do you use that as an opportunity to learn more about them on a personal level, let them, share more information about the chapter? Because it was one of those things where you showed up, you wanted to get involved instantly. And I wonder if fellow Penn Staters show up and they might have a similar experience where, they find their people and they want to stay engaged.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's interesting because one of the things I'm always trying to figure out at the watch parties is like, does this person want to talk right now? Or are they just so locked in to the game, which I respect, right? I will talk no matter what. I mean, of course, if we're like on the 5-yard line, I'm paying attention and whatnot. But, I try to, it's like you have to sort of like get a sense of like where people are and how focused they are. But, once there is an opportunity for a conversation, what I try to do is I listen to what their experiences were like at Penn State. That's what I like to start with or ask about. And then I try to connect that experience with something that the chapter does. So whether it's like when we do our pub crawl and we're raising money for Thon, or when we do First Fridays in Bel Air, where we volunteer to serve at the front gate selling tickets and things, which is a great community awareness activity. But basically, I'm listening to their Penn State experience and then trying to make a connection to something that we're doing as a chapter, the student send off. Maybe if they have a student who's of college age, I say, oh, do you happen to, are any of their friends heading to Penn State? We do this great send off, or, that's the kind of, for me, connection, kind of strategic connection I'm looking to make in those settings.
Yeah, I think the phrase you might have used is a unifying experience where people have a shared experience. And, the great thing about Penn Staters is that, and Letterman talk about this all the time, they might have played for Penn State, 30 years apart, but there's so many things that keep them connected and united. We had the webpage up there on the page again. I'll ask you to maybe expand a little bit more on what are some of the points of pride that you have as a chapter year round that you're doing, whether it's Thon or scholarship fundraising. What are you doing, on a yearly basis that really has you fired up about the chapter?
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like I'm still, of course, very new, but I like being able to, I like the student send off because that fits very much with like what my longtime career path had been, which is higher education and academic affairs and student affairs. So I love to talk with young people heading to Penn State about what are they curious about? What kind of opportunities are they open towards? Because as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I really didn't have, a context or a framework for understanding what my Penn State experience could be, and so just, that gets me fired up because I want to just confirm for students that this is the best decision you're making at 17. Like your frontal lobe cortex is not fully developed, but I'm telling you, this is the best decision you're going to make. And just to try to affirm that, again, and also try to maybe put on a little bit of my higher ed administration experience hat and give them maybe a little nugget to hold on to, as they head off to Penn State. That's what I get, I think, the most charged up about. But I also like the times when Penn Staters are out in the community and our energy is just like, so hype and bubbly. And you have people like Ohio Staters are like, oh my gosh, hi, they say hi, and it's like, we know you really wanted to be a Penn Stater, but it's fine. So I love those moments too, because it's just fun, and it's lets people know like how engaged we really are.
Bethany, I can't imagine any like potential Penn Stater meeting you and saying, nah, this isn't for me. I'm going to go somewhere else. Like if I'm a high school junior or senior and I'm speaking with you, Bethany, like there is no doubt I'm going to be a Nittany Lion. And so I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for, I can't imagine how many folks have ended up at Penn State because they have crossed paths with you. So thank you.
You're so funny. Thank you, John. I love it.
Yeah, this is fun. This is going to be one of those conversations that could go on all day. You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We're speaking with Bethany Pace, two-time Penn State grad, vice president of our Upper Chesapeake Chapter. We're going to switch gears just a little bit, maybe have some quick hit questions for you, Bethany. What was your favorite class at Penn State as a student?
My favorite class, definitely Com 260. It was tough. That is like the gateway, at least it was the gateway class for journalism majors. It's like where you either ended up a journalism major or you did not. And I had Thomas Berner, amazing professor. But it was a class where, when you wrote something, one mistake would mean a B, two mistakes, a C, three mistakes, a D. But it really taught me a lot. And I felt really proud of myself when I passed it and was able to continue as a journalism major officially.
Yeah, Thomas Berner, name that folks in the State College area might recognize, still a freelance writer, longtime professor. When you're back on campus, what are a couple of things that you really like to do, whether it's a place to stop by or, what's at the top of your, want to do list?
Yeah. Well, so when I went to Penn State, I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and at that time, sororities had suites in the lobby area of the residence halls, and so the AKAs had a suite in Bigler Hall at East Campus, and that's where we would have our meetings, and that's where we would have activities and programs, and I always like to visit that spot because one of our sorority symbols is ivy, and ivy grows from there. And I take a little clipping, very small. I don't want the groundskeepers to be upset with me, but that was becoming a member of the sorority was definitely one of my top experiences. And so just going back there, like, sort of reminds me of the significance of that experience. And then I love a good grilled sticky. I mean, that has to happen no matter what the scale says before I arrive. I'm definitely leaving with that. And then I love to walk the path between the library and College Avenue. That's just iconic for me. And even though the squirrels are probably more rabid than they were in the 1900s, as my kids say, it still just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, Petit Mal and the squirrels, they are very confident. They are not swayed by this is their campus and we're just kind of, taking up space for 4 years and God bless them.
Right. They are not, they are unbothered by us. Unbothered.
Yeah, that's the right word, unbothered. The lessons, I have to imagine that there are lessons that you learned at Penn State, whether it was in the classroom or with your sorority. Are there lessons that you learned at Penn State that you find yourself applying today as a mom, as a businesswoman in your day-to-day life?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, I think I would say resilience. I think Penn State really taught me to be a resilient person. One of the things personally that happened for me is in April of my freshman year, my father passed away suddenly. And so he and I had that lovely experience just, months earlier at less than a year before at Spend a Summer Day. And when he passed away, I thought, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can come back. And the people in my residence hall, Brumbaugh, that's where I lived, my roommate, the RA, my professors, like everyone rallied around me to essentially say, we need you to come back. Like, this is going to be part of your story. And I did, and it wasn't easy. But I did, and I saw that same resilience in other people along the way throughout the course of my undergraduate education and my graduate education. So I think that that's one of the lessons. I mean, of course, also when it's like 12 degrees and you're walking to class and your nose hair is frozen. I didn't want to go, but I did anyway. And so, like, that's kind of a more humorous take on resilience. But yeah, Penn State taught me to be tough. I mean, I think I already was a little bit, but realized that, yeah, Bethany, you really are tough. And you're getting tougher here because of this experience, but it's because I was challenged and I was supported, if that makes sense. Not because it was just tough for the sake of being tough, but it was the combination of the two, that there is challenge and then there is support. And those things, when they come together, are transformative.
Yeah, it sounded like Penn State molded you as a person, like the alma mater says. I appreciate you bringing up the story about your dad, Bethany. I know that's not easy, but he saw you become a Penn State student, though, right?
Yes, and that's the best. I mean, he had his Penn State dad shirt, and he was very, very proud. And yeah, like I always feel like connected. I'm glad that he saw me to that point, and like, as I look back at my life, right, where I spent more time living without him than with him, I'm really grateful that he saw me come into this transition, the transition from a high school student to a college student. And I know he was proud of me. So.
Oh, well, we'll wrap up the conversation, Bethany, and like we got to have you back on the podcast because I want to keep the conversation going, but we'll wrap up today's conversation.
Okay.
For you, what is the best part about being a part of the Penn State Alumni Network?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's constant opportunity. I mean, I do think one of the common characteristics of Penn Staters is that we are that there's a drive, right? There's a certain drive that I see across all of the Penn Staters that I know. And like being part of the alumni community almost allows you to extend your undergraduate experience or your graduate experience, you know, in a really dynamic way, like in unexpected ways, because you're like, oh, this is how this person's using their Penn State education. That's fascinating. Or, you know, this is how it relates to something that's happening in my life now. So I just think it's being involved in the alumni chapter allows you to still be around driven, intelligent, resilient people. And that's not easy to find in today's world. I mean, there's kind of not a pandemic, an epidemic of loneliness in general, that I think the broader society faces, but to find people that are like-minded, that's really a special privilege. And the older I get, the more I realize that it's uncommon. It's uncommon. So of course I would say to anybody, you know, go forth if that's something that you valued when you were a student. It still exists.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're a Penn Stater, there's a lot to be grateful for. Bethany, we are so grateful for you and everything that you do for Penn State and the Alumni Association. We have to have you back on the podcast. So I just have to say that now, if that's okay with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored. I have goosebumps, John. I would love that.
All right. Bethany, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. Bethany Pace, Vice President of our Upper Chesapeake Chapter. Check them out on their website, their social media channels. Bethany, two-time Penn State grad. This has just been such a wonderful conversation. Thanks again for stopping by the podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me. We are
Penn State.